F-16s and lovely Russian propaganda manipulations around and about. Kursk. Why? What now? And what's to expect? And cherry on the top, an interview with high-ranked American diplomat. All that in more detail on UATV English in general and me, Henry Keane, in particular, bringing the hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. On Kursk. Russia somehow noticed that Ukrainian forces had pushed into the Kursk region last Tuesday, and Russian military bloggers also blogged about how our forces made some headway. But all of them, official Kremlin and official bloggers, claim the situation has since stabilized. I wonder if while saying so, the Kremlin actually meant a deadly missile attack on a shopping center in Konstantinovka, where Russian missile murdered 14 people, including 2 children. A retaliation in a very Russian way indeed. And what Ukraine wants is to make Russia feel what it has started on its own skin.
I wish you health, dear Ukrainians. Today, I have already had 3 reports by General Staff Commander Syrsky. Reports on effective and productive work, exactly the kind of reports our state needs today. I'm grateful to every soldier and officer who carries out the defense of our Ukrainian positions in general and other necessary defense tasks, execution in particular. Ukrainians know how to reach their goals, and it wasn't our choice that these goals are military ones. Russia brought war on our land and should feel what it has done by itself. We, in turn, are craving to achieve our goals in peacetime and under the conditions of a just peace, and so will it be.
On Wednesday, Moscow's top general, Valery Gerasimov, said the attacks had been halted, but Russia has so far failed to repel the Ukrainian forces from its territory. How come, I wonder? A second big army of the world. I just loved one of your comments to my recent wrap-up saying, I quote, "Russian army is still second in might army in Russia." Kursk acting governor, Comrade Alexei Smirnov, has ordered local authorities to speed up the evacuation of civilians in areas at risk. On Saturday, more than 76,000 people had been evacuated from Kursk risk area. Well, my suggestion to Alexei Smirnov is why not to consider also Moscow a risk area, so not to bother twice, you know. So what are Ukrainians doing in Kursk after all? Let me put that in easy terms for you out there. I could have been giving you more figures and showing you more videos, and, of course, I will be propagating the Ukrainian vision of events. Some might blame me for that, saying that there is also a Russian version. Well, sure it is. We have seen it in Ukraine since 2014 when Crimea was annexed. And then in February 2022 when a full-scale invasion burst out. In that Russian version of reality, we in Ukraine have a right to die under Russian missile attacks every day, and this is the only right we have. According to the Russian version of reality, there is no Ukraine, no history, no language. Ukraine has no right to exist otherwise but under Great Russian Empire. So, what Ukraine does in Kursk right now, showing the world there is no Great Russian Empire. The Soviet leftovers, like Putin and company, are already indicted by ICC, are already losing their own territories in a war that they themselves have instigated. Remember how Russians, and not only those in Russia, all around the globe were making fun of United Nations by publicly urinating on every possible international law in general and human rights in particular. And now, the same very Russians appeal to the same very United Nations demanding a condemnation of the military actions of Ukraine in Russia taken in response of the same very Russian aggression. Well, Russian soldiers raped our women in Ukraine and abducted our children, and now Russians are unpleasantly surprised of what is up in Kursk. Well, we only delivered what was ordered. Sure, Russian-minded reservoir dogs in Europe and in my native Latvia, by the way, are barking loud at any tree in sight in a desperate attempt to repel the unpleasant objective reality, to avoid from somehow occasionally grasping it. Russia is a colossus on a feet of clay. And what Ukrainian armed forces just did in Kursk is cut its tendons. Remember recently Comrade Peskov said like, Poof, them F-16s are not a magic pill, and like the monkey Russian army will make sure these planes will be down and blah 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 and so on. And Peskov and other Soviet spellcasters just can't stop talking about it. It's like F-16s, 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 then Putin said F-16s, 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 Putin said, and so on and so further. So just Google it. Russian pilots are bragging loudly about how they're going to down American fighter jets with their superior in every way Russian jets, and Ukrainian pilots and Biden and Zelensky and Hulk and Captain America and all Marvel and DC and every single one who ever dares to stand in their Russian way, never even mentioning that it is a way of criminal international aggression, just by the way. Land annexation, warmongering, and murder. So, why so much talking? If Russian jets are so much better than F-16s, the number is so insignificant and quality is so bad, as Russians say, why bother and talk about that loud and that much? Well, one thing is clear, no talking ever prevented things from actually happening.
We have made possible what was our ambition, our defense need, and now it is actually a reality in our skies. F-16s are in Ukraine. We made it happen. I am proud of all our guys who are skillfully mastering this aircraft and have already started using them for our state. I thank our team for this important result. I thank all our partners who are really effectively helping us with the F-16s and the first states that accepted our request for the provision of the aircraft. Thank you, Denmark, the Netherlands, the United States, and all our partners. We appreciate your support.
Well, experts agree the F-16s is no magic, but a calm pill indeed. These war machines will lessen the impunity with which Russian Su-34s have been recently pummeling Ukraine's front lines. The Russians have been launching more than 100 crude but effective, unfortunately, glide bombs every day without having to leave Russian airspace even. As experts say, the priority will be to force Russian pilots to stay further back or risk being shot down. Of course, it will take time to integrate the F-16s with Ukraine's air defense systems and to acquire operating experience. Still, the F-16's arrival undoubtedly marks the start of building a NATO-standard air force for Ukraine. It plugs Ukraine into, and very intimately, if you ask me, the F-16's well-developed worldwide supply chain. NATO weapon systems such as Storm Shadow Scalp missiles will be far more effective when carried by a plane they were designed for, rather than lashed onto elderly MiGs and Sukhois. Ukraine's F-16s also come equipped with Link 16, a NATO tactical data link that allows secure communications and improved situational awareness. Too few and too late, though they may be, the F-16's importance should not be underestimated. Still, this is exactly what Russians are doing. Underestimating. Well, enemy's fault is our advantage, and maybe Russian arrogance is exactly that secret weapon of Ukrainian armed forces. Of course, it is of utmost importance to us in Ukraine what America actually thinks about what is up in Kursk. So, UATV English talks to American diplomat, executive US ambassador to NATO, permanent representative of the US in NATO, special representative of the United States State Department on Ukraine in 2017-2019, Kurt Volker. Interview on UATV English. Kurt Volker, who wears many hats, American diplomat, executive US ambassador to NATO 2008-2009, permanent representative of the USA in NATO, special representative of the United States Department on Ukraine 2017-2019, director of the McCain Institute for International Leadership 2012-2019. Good afternoon, Mr. Volker.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
First question, the fears of escalation. Whatever that term means, do you remember the Senate approving the last tranche of $16 billion? One of the green light conditions from Republican side was a so-called strategic victory plan over Russia. So does America have any strategic victory plan over Russia, or at least any plan at all? Or is it okay for the United States just to keep fearing the escalation instead of wanting actual victory over the adversary?
Right. Well, you put your finger exactly on it. The Senate demanded and the Congress demanded such a report on what the strategy is because they see that there is no strategy. We have a tendency to provide a lot of aid, a lot of support, but not enough. We put restrictions on how it's used. It is sometimes slow in getting delivered. It is all done as just enough, but not enough. And that's why the Congress demanded such a report. And frankly, there hasn't been a strategy since then either. There has been nothing put together. And this is, as you say, caused by the fear of escalation. There's a fear that Russia may do something else. There's a fear that Russia might use a nuclear weapon. The war might widen. They could do things elsewhere in the world, in Africa or the Middle East. So that is preventing Washington from really having a strategy of defeating Russian forces in Ukraine, which is what we need.
But this is just only protracting the war. I mean, Russia does it anyway. And, you know, like my good friend, I hope that I can call him friend, Lieutenant Colonel of British Army, Glenn Grant, he says that the day Russia stops waving the nuclear gavel and tries to use it is the last day of Russia. Do you believe this is the case?
Yeah, I think that that's exactly right. Every time there is some event where Ukraine is doing well, Russia rolls out the nuclear threat.
That's right.
And they're hoping that the West will respond to that and both back down itself and urge the Ukrainians to back down. It is a pretty consistent pattern that we see. And honestly, I think we have to actually believe more in strength and deterrence as a way to prevent Russia from doing things.
Right.
It shouldn't be about our backing down and being self-deterred. It should be about having a position of strength where Russia knows there will be consequences if it takes certain actions, and that those consequences are unacceptable to Russia.
Right.
Strategic nuclear deterrence still works perfectly well. We need to do the same at a tactical level as well, saying that any tactical use of any nuclear weapon is completely unacceptable and will be met with a devastating response.
How can Ukraine help in this matter? How can we make West to deter better?
You know, I don't know what else Ukraine could do that it hasn't already tried. I think that they've had discussion after discussion, meetings with the White House, with Congress, with the Senate. President Zelensky has spoken publicly many, many times. He's reached out directly to the American public. You've had MPs coming to the U.S. making the case at a lawmaker level to fellow lawmakers in the United States. So in terms of explanation, there isn't much more explanation that can be done, I don't think.
Well, maybe we just... Well, yeah, pardon me.
So, no, go ahead.
No, maybe we can start explaining in another way. Like, for example, what do you think about the situation in Kursk? What America thinks of that, as far as
yeah. So that's where I was going as well. So what I think would make a difference for a U.S. administration would be seeing a way where Ukraine can actually win, where Ukraine establishes a dominant position. And some of the things we've seen in the last few weeks are encouraging. I would say the successful strikes in Crimea against air defense systems, against Sevastopol, forcing the Russian Navy to withdraw from Crimea, eventually cutting off Russian forces that are in Crimea, having territory inside Russia as a bargaining chip. These are all things that put Ukraine into a stronger position that may give some encouragement to the U.S. administration to believe that you can create a stronger position for Ukraine, create a better negotiating position for Ukraine in the long run, and do so without risking major escalation by Russia.
Right. Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, what would change for Ukraine, you believe?
Well, it's interesting. If it's President Harris, then I think you'll see a continuation of the Biden approach, which has been a tremendous amount of support for Ukraine, but with a lot of limitations, restrictions, and without a plan for victory. I think if it is President Trump, you're likely to see a desire to rebuild a position of strength for the West and for Ukraine, with a combined pressure to get into a negotiation in order to create an end to the fighting. And I don't know if you saw an article that former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and David Urban published about 2 weeks ago. I think that's the best description that I've seen of what a Trump approach might look like.
Well, you say that Trump's desire to rebuild something, but desire is not the ability. Do you think he has the ability to do that?
Oh, I think so. I think so. A lot of what has been lacking are things that are eminently doable, like lifting restrictions on the use of weapons that we provide,
Right.
putting in place a lend-lease policy again, such as we used to have in the Congress that was never used, but putting that back in place so Ukraine can borrow even more resources than we're providing through assistance. Certainly driving down global energy prices through increased U.S. production is something he'll want to do regardless, because that's something he wants to do for the United States. So I think a lot of those measures are in fact doable.
All right. So, and you, Mr. Walker, you put your trust more in Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? Who you vote for?
You know, I don't think we have to make a choice in terms of what we do. We have to prepare for any eventuality. We shouldn't make any assumptions about U.S. policy. We should instead be pushing for what the best policy should be, and we should be preparing for whatever contingency might arise, creating the strongest position possible. And that's something that I would argue is true, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's our European allies, whether it's others in Europe like Moldova or Georgia. That's the right approach to take. Don't make assumptions. Do your own homework.
Be prepared. Are you talking about the plan A and the plan B just as well? In any case, you're ready for whatever.
In any case, yes. In any case, I think the way we should plan and prepare and act is going to be the same.
So when you say we, are you talking about Ukraine and United States?
I'm saying those who are trying to establish a Ukrainian victory and a renewed peace in Europe, which I view as kind of a common family, a common transatlantic community. We all have an interest in seeing Ukraine succeed and peace restored in Europe.
Lovely. Thank you so very much for your time and expertise. And I have a lot of questions. Just don't have too much time this time. But next time we meet, I will definitely ask more questions.
Very good. And I'll be planning to come to the YES conference in September, so perhaps see you there.
Promise me an interview in this very studio.
Sure. Well, studio is always difficult because of travel time. It depends where the studio is.
Okay, whenever when you come to Ukraine, just let me know. I'll be there.
Okay, very good. Will do.
Great. Thank you so very much, Mr. Volker. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Kurt Volker was with us, American diplomat, executive U.S. ambassador to NATO, permanent representative of the USA in NATO, and the man who wears many hats. Quite an interesting conversation. Stay tuned for more. Thank you. Well, it looks like that was it for tonight and for the week. Thanks so much for being with us. Please like and share, comment. Your voice matters indeed, as it in turn helps Ukrainian voice to be heard worldwide. More to come next week with my colleagues on UATV English, bringing you hard truth in easy terms, as usual, directly from Ukraine. Stay tuned for more and goodbye.